Hi, today's story is Cunningham's Rooster. There once was a cat named Cunningham who made music. It was his job. He made up songs for singing and songs for dancing and music just for listening. First, he would hear a song in his head. Then he would play it on his piano. After a while, he would write the notes down in his big black notebook with a felt pen so he would remember how to play them again. They were fine songs, too. The only trouble was no one ever heard them. Cunningham lived alone, except for his pet goldfish, and everyone knows that goldfish don't have an ear for music. It was beginning to get Cunningham down. What good is a song if there's no one here to hear it? He asked himself. One day, as he sat playing the piano and wishing that a goldfish did have an ear for music, he heard a pecking sound at the sliding glass door. He looked up to see who it was. It was a rooster. "Hi, my name is Kenneth," the rooster announced, pushing open the door with his beak. "I was just passing by. I stopped to tell you that I really like that music you're playing. It's mellow." Cunningham couldn't have been more pleased. "Well, there's more music where that came from. Why don't you come inside?" Kenneth did, and Cunningham played him every song he had ever made up. Songs for singing, songs for dancing, songs just for listening to. When the music was all over, Kenneth flapped his wings and clucked with pleasure. It was right then that Cunningham knew that that rooster and he were in perfect harmony. "Stay with me," he urged Kenneth. "You can be the first one to hear all my new songs. You will give me inspiration." "What's inspiration?" Kenneth wanted to know. "It's the feeling a cat gets that makes him hear songs in his head," Cunningham explained. "Well," said Kenneth, "I'll try and give you some. What will you give me?" "I will give you a roost of your own and all the brown rice that you can eat." "It's a deal," Kenneth said promptly. He picked out a roost in Cunningham's bookcase and went to sleep, thinking how lucky he was that he wasn't in the crowded barnyard anymore. Having someone to listen to his music changed Cunningham's life. Now, every day found him happily at work, making up new songs and then writing them down in his big black notebook. As for Kenneth, every day found him sitting under the piano, listening to Cunningham's songs, or sitting on the piano, watching Cunningham write down music notes, or scratching around in the yard outside, talking to the bugs in riddles before he ate them. Do bugs look like notes of music? Or do music notes look like bugs? That was a question that Kenneth never tired of asking. One day, Cunningham was watching Kenneth out in the yard. Suddenly he said, "I have an inspiration. I will make up some music about Kenneth. It'll be a musical poem, a rhapsody. It'll have 3 parts, and I will call it Rooster Rhapsody." He sat right down at the piano and began. The first part was all about Kenneth. It was about how Kenneth looked and the things Kenneth did and what Kenneth was like. There were soft sounds in it, like the clucking sounds that Kenneth made when he talked to the bugs. And there were trills, like Kenneth's wattles shaking when he walked. And there was a little strutty dance that was Kenneth when he scratched in the dirt. Altogether, it was a wonderful song, light as feathers and happy as a rooster crowing in the morning. When Kenneth heard the music, he loved it. "It's me all over," he said. Cunningham was pleased. He thought it was by far the best thing he had ever made up. He decided to take it to the city and show it to an important music person. Before he left, Cunningham filled Kenneth's dish with brown rice and had a serious talk with him. "Kenneth," he said, "there's a hungry opossum who lives back in those woods. She has 50 teeth and likes nothing better than to eat plump chickens. Promise me you won't go out in the yard after dark." Kenneth promised. All went well during the day, but towards evening, moths began to gather on the screens. The fireflies winked at Kevin from outside. The moon rose and made the trees look like shadows and the shadows look like trees. Kenneth began to feel restless. He longed to talk in riddles to the fireflies, and he wanted to visit his old barnyard friends. At last, Kenneth said, "This is the sort of night when a rooster could break his promise." He slid the glass door open with his beak and he stepped outside into the darkness. He clucked softly to a firefly. Is a bug like a note of music? Or is a note of music like... But before Kenneth had even gotten to the end of his riddle, the hungry possum crept quietly out of the shadows and pounced. Cunningham came home feeling cheerful. The important music person liked his work. He said he wouldn't be at all surprised if the Rooster Rhapsody made Cunningham famous. Cunningham couldn't wait to tell Kenneth, but Kenneth was nowhere to be found. Cunningham went to the kitchen. The brown rice was there, but Kenneth wasn't. And he wasn't roosting in the bookcase or under the piano or in any of his usual places. Finally, Cunningham took a lantern and went out to the backyard. There on the ground were the tracks of an opossum and 4 golden feathers from a rooster's tail. It didn't take long for Cunningham to guess what had happened. It was a sad cat who walked back into the house that night. He sat down at the piano. He thought of all the fine times that were over. He thought all the sad years that were ahead. Slowly, Cunningham began to make up a new song. It was a song as restless as a spring night and as mysterious as shadows. Some of it sounded like an animal pouncing. Some of it sounded like a slow and low, sad, sad loss of a friend. "This is the second part of my Rooster Rhapsody," said Cunningham with tears in his eyes, "but it's the last song I will ever make up. My inspiration is gone. What is a musician without his inspiration? And what is a cat without his work?" He closed up the piano. He put away his big black notebook and he put the cap on the felt pen. Then he lay down in his bed and he pulled the covers up over his head. The days passed. The milk got sour on the back porch. Dust collected on the piano and algae grew in the fish bowl. Then, one morning, there was a tapping at the sliding glass door. "Come in," Cunningham called weakly, not even bothering to open his eyes. A few moments later, he heard a scratching sound. The next thing he knew, someone was pulling the covers from his head. Cunningham opened one eye. It was Kenneth. "Dear friend," cried Cunningham, "is it really you?" "No one else but," clucked Kenneth. "I thought you'd been gobbled," said Cunningham. There were tracks of an opossum. There were tail feathers everywhere. "Tut, tut, old friend," said Kenneth. "No harm done. Remember, a possum can pounce, but a rooster can roost. And that's just what I did. Flew right up in the tree. Nothing lost, except a few tail feathers." "But why didn't you come back sooner?" Cunningham wanted to know. "I should have," Kenneth admitted, "but it was such a lovely spring night, and I wanted to visit some of my old friends from the barnyard." Cunningham didn't have the heart to be angry with Kenneth. Also, at that moment, a new song came into his head. He opened the piano and he began to play. What a song it was! A joyful song! A song full of mellow chords and notes that were as golden as Kenneth's tail. It was a song about our friends coming back and the happiness that comes with him. It was a song for everyone in the world and for every instrument in the orchestra. Now the 3 parts of Rooster's Rhapsody were finished. After Cunningham wrote the last notes, he played the whole thing straight through. He played the first part, which was light as a feather. He played the second part, which was slow and sad and low. And he played the last part, which was mellow and golden. Each song by itself was fine, but all together they made the most magical music ever. All the animals came out of the woods to hear the Rooster Rhapsody. The birds came, and the squirrels, and the rabbits, and the raccoons. Even the deer came out to hear the song. Every animal who heard the music went away happier. As for Kenneth, he almost burst with pride. He threw back his head and he crowed for joy. Cunningham wrote down the sounds of Kenneth's crowing, and they became the final notes in the Rooster Rhapsody. The Rhapsody did make Cunningham famous. It made Kenneth famous too. Whenever the Rooster Rhapsody was played, someone would ask who had been the inspiration for such wonderful music. Then someone else would always remember and tell the story of Cunningham's rooster. I hope you enjoyed that story as much as I did.